Is the biographical retrospective on famous contemporary artist Jeff Koons. So, um, as read in my exhibition part of my website, this is going to be a little bit of review from that piece. Koons, of Koons' early life specifically. So Koons was born in York, Pennsylvania, to his mother and father, Henry. Uh, his father was a furniture dealer and worked with like interior design and decoration, and his mother a seamstress. And by age of 8, Koons was already creating replicas of old master paintings, and this was kind of like the known starting step to his love for art and how that grew. And he would also sell these paintings in his father's shop. Now, as he became a teenager, he became fascinated with the artist Salvador Dali, uh, and he desperately wanted to like meet Dali. So he ended up one day calling the hotel that he was at in New York City, and ended up getting to meet him and go to an exhibition of the Knoedler Gallery together. And after graduating high school, Koons enrolled in the Maryland Institute College of Art in Baltimore, where he continued to uh, grow his interest in Dali and painting more neo-surrealist dreamscapes at the time. In '74, Koons viewed an exhibition of the Whitney Museum of American Art in New York City by Jim Nutt, a founding member of the Chicago Surrealist movement and the Chicago Imagists. And this was kind of a watershed moment for Koons' life because it's the basis of him transferring to Chicago and working with Nutt and Imagist teachers that showed their bright and often grotesque paintings that inspired consumer culture. That were inspired by consumer culture. And after studying for a year, he returned back to college and graduated with a BFA in '76 and awarded an honorary degree from the Chicago Institute 30 years later. Now, Koons then moved to Manhattan, and for a while he was inspired into the East Village art scene, and mingled with like David Sile and Julia Shinabe, older artists who had established reputation in New York art. There was a lot of artists in the mainstream art world that embraced counterculture aesthetics and graffiti and kind of rejected the works that Koons was starting off with. And in 1980, Koons, sorry to clarify, in 1977, Koons was working in the Museum of Modern Art, and he ended up quitting, and finally he debuted his first piece by 1983, Equilibrium, where it's the 3 basketballs floating in a glass case. So from then on, I'll kind of go into a history of the works he actually completed from then on, because that's his big debut. That's where most of his inspiration came from. So in '80, as I said, he did the floating basketballs, and he did a lot of other similar works where it's the floating basketballs into still water and all sorts of like things in glass containers looking like they're floating. Then he started creating large-scale replicas of inflatable toys like the Rabbit in the 1980s, inspired by Jean Baudrillard. And it was his first solo that was his first solo exhibition at an international monument gallery in New York City. Then with that show, he also got recognized for his liquor ads, the Hennessy, the civilized way to lay down the law. And finally, he executed an international exhibit right after that called Banality, where it was recognized in 3 different locations, and it was mainly recognized for the famous piece Michael Jackson and Bubbles, as you can see on this side. Sorry, it's so small. And then in 1989, Koons exhibited the Made in Heaven series, where it's the graphic photography that he did with the famous Italian porn star. I'm sorry, I can't remember her name right now, but she was famous for his time, and she was his wife for a while, and an inspiration for his pieces. And then years later, he made a 43-foot tall, flowering toppery puppy. And then throughout the 90s, he made a celebration series. He did more steel sculptures, just like the rabbit one, like egg, diamond, tulips, hearts, and most recognizable, the balloon dog. Koons then eventually was more inspired by famous cartoon characters like Popeye and his Hulk Elvis series, where he created statues of Popeye in like granite and then one in steel, and then the Hulk Elvis series, it was like this inflatable weird way of Hulk and doing some kind of natural things like picking up trash cans and carts and whatnot. That kind of concludes, no, this does conclude Jeff Koons' biographical retrospective.